And when our readers come to trust us with their news, they're not just trusting, the SMS format or the speed. They're trusting us because we take responsibility. And we take that responsibility and put our whole brand reputation on the line every single day.
So, for people that are hearing this for the first time, informed.now, what is it?
It's a pleasure to share. So we started informed.now to put the power of fact in the palm of everyday people. We find that so much of what we call news in America these days is actually not news at all. It's news commentary. It's news opinion. It's news analysis, if you can use that word. But very little of it is actual facts. And we find that that power exists still for the professional elite, but not for the everyday person. And with the informed.now project, we bring the power of facts in the palm of every American.
So, how did you start this? What made you, well, I mean, you kind of gave the reason, but what made you say, you know what, I'm going to start this? And how long ago did you start it?
Totally. It was a compounding frustration that I think really started from my upbringing, growing up in Ukraine, and then coming of age in Israel before coming to the United States, and seeing the high stakes of misinformation and misinformation overload, take form in very loud environments, very loud conflicts, very consequential moments for world history in Ukraine, in Israel, and now in the United States. Seeing this show play a third time in the US made me feel like, gosh, we ought to do better. There must be a better way to consume news for normal people like us, and we ought to build it. And even if it's hard, it is worth trying.
So, how does it work?
It works very, very simply. It's designed to be a minimalist product that reshapes not just the content or the delivery of news, but the news reading habit itself. We focus on everybody, an everyday person, whether you are the CEO or you are a waiter or someone working in the service industry, whatever you are doing in whichever stage in your career, we want to make sure that you have access. So the product that we've built is designed around that level of simplicity and minimalism to speak to our philosophy. We operate the entire service through SMS. There is no app, no accounts to remember, no usernames and passwords. There's also no email because nobody reads email anymore. We operate through SMS, and we're proudly the number one news by SMS provider in North America, all the states as well as Canada. What we do every morning is send you a single text, only one text per day, that has the recap across politics, economics, technology, culture, war and peace, a whole range of topics, a recap of what changed the world in the last 24 hours. So you can stay informed without being drained. You can stay informed without being influenced by any of the bias out there. And you can stay informed without being overwhelmed by rich media, videos, pop-ups, etc., that are looking to lay claim on your time. We pioneer what we call news minimalism.
So, can people respond to the text?
Absolutely.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. We support two-way communication. And anytime that you respond to one of our texts, you're always talking to a human. You're never talking to a robot. You're never talking to an AI. You're talking to a member of my team. And we have a team of talented researchers who work around the clock and around the world to bring facts to the surface.
So, like you kind of answered that question. Who decides what's important? There's a lot of shit hitting the wall every day, it seems like. So, who says, let me back up. Is everybody get the same text? Say you have 1,000 people, million, whatever. Does everyone get that same text?
Yes, we focus on the most world-changing news, and our filter is significance. And so we have these conversations on a team regularly as to whether we should personalize and create hyper echo chambers for people. We find that even though a lot of people talk about wanting that, when it comes to actually voting with their feet and voting with their wallet, often people aren't actually willing to pay for personalized news insight. And it also creates this whole other philosophical question of, are we just creating the most effective echo chamber in the world? And do we need one more apart from social media? So we focus on the same coverage for all of our readers, and we focus on significance. And the way we determine what is significant is through a very transparent model. We have an approach that quantifies how many people are being affected. And we're usually looking at the scale of millions. And how much is that change in terms of their lifestyle, their optionality, their household choices, their safety, their security, things that are changing their lives. So you're never going to see anything about sports from us or anything about celebrity drama or, political gossip. That is not kind of our realm. And there are better places to go if that's what you're seeking.
So, just a hypothetical, 9 a.m., right? I don't know, explosion at the White House, let's just say. But no one knows exactly what happened. So the person gets their message and it says, whatever it says, explosion at the White House, authorities are saying blah, blah, blah. But then at 12 o'clock, they have more information. But that person is not going to get a text till the next morning, correct?
I love what you're bringing up, which is essentially an example of breaking news. We don't do breaking news. Part of the reason is because when news breaks, nobody knows what's going on, right? They just know something happened. And a lot of times, the legacy news media companies are rushing to be the first to report before anything's actually confirmed, right? I think a more grounded example is the death of Charlie Kirk, right? If we were to use that example very literally, we would say, okay, Charlie Kirk has been assassinated. Breaking news update, right? Everyone's rushing to be the first to report. 20 minutes later, update number two, right? We know who the suspect is. We're searching for him. An hour later, suspect is in custody. He pleads not guilty. And 2 hours later, right, he pleads guilty or something else. 5 hours later, all these updates. When you are committing to a breaking news approach, you are essentially to reporting on a story every time there's an update. And we have a basic sense of respect for a reader's time around, we would rather tell you once we know instead of rushing to tell you the first. And a lot of our readers don't actually appreciate being, an hour early to know something or 20 minutes to know something. They appreciate hearing about a news topic once the facts are clear, once we have everything kind of laid out for them and they can see the next morning and say, okay, wow, that's what happened, right? Because if you're somebody who's in California, in Toronto, in New York, and you're hearing about the death of Charlie Kirk, like it isn't immediately going to change your decisions of that day. It isn't immediately going to influence what you're going to do with your life. Getting that tomorrow, right? In our case, the next morning, which is at any point you'll ever be in 24 hours late, you're getting that news item once it's already been confirmed, researched, fact validated, so that you no longer have to double check, go down rabbit holes, feel the stress and anxiety of like, is this true? Is this not true? Instead, you're getting the confirmed factuality around the topic.
Hmm. So I was born in, you're obviously younger than I am. But in the 70s, let's just use the 70s, there were three channels: ABC, NBC, CBS, maybe a VHS channel. So that was the competition for the news. Something happened, JFK shot. They all went on it. I don't know, it seemed more truthful. But again, what do I know? I'm a young guy. I'm just, listening. But now, there's so much bombardment. Um, so in this era of misinformation, I guess, you know, why should people trust informed.now? Not that, not no disrespect, but I'm just saying where's the trust level for that one text, so to speak?
I love that you asked that question. That is our entire mission. One of the things that we find most problematic with the what we refer to as the legacy media is that the incentives that exist in those businesses are around advertisement. They're not actually around informing people, right? When you look at the spread page, main page, or front page of a physical newspaper, you're seeing mostly ads, solicitation, and sensationalism. The reason sensationalism exists is because it's serving the interests of the advertiser as the customer. And most of the revenue of these traditional companies comes from advertisers, which makes the advertisers the customers of these businesses, no longer the readers. For us, we align our incentives only with the incentives of the reader. We refuse advertisement, sponsorship revenue, any kind of, any kind of sponsorship. They can come in many different forms. We even refuse investors so that we can stay completely independent and editorially pure to align only to the interest of our readers. So the only revenue we accept is subscription from our readers. And if at any point we do wrong by a reader, they leave. And if they leave and stop paying us revenue, we don't exist as a company. We have no ulterior motive to design for some other external incentive, some other external interest, because of our philosophical, ethical, and literal financial alignment to serving only our reader.
So just to be clear, you get the 9 a.m. text, whoever, the person gets a 9 a.m. text. I mean, if you're living in a cabin and, I'm in Pennsylvania and, you're hunting bear or whatever, you're not really tuned in. Like I'm in Philly. So I don't even have to pay attention and I hear stuff, you know, oh, did you hear this happened? There's something, somebody was shot or there was a school shooting or something. It doesn't obviously have to be horrible. It could be someone died, Robin Williams, whatever. My point is, I'm hearing it without even trying to hear it. And I'm not in a cabin, isolated. How do you, I guess if something happens at 12 o'clock, I'm not really going to get your information until the next day at 9 a.m., let's just say. So it's kind of a hard, like for me, I could block it out. I could just, just walk away from the TV, turn off my phone. But sometimes the curiosity piques the, like, what happened? Oh my God, what? I gotta hear it, even if it's coming from, the horse shit news. How does that affect your timeline? I guess because I keep getting the one text thing in my head, and by the next day, a whole lot of stuff could have happened.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned that. I think it's an ongoing conversation on our team and with our readers. And while in theory, it sounds like there's this like huge coverage gap between 9 a.m. today and 9 a.m. tomorrow, but in reality, the in practicality, a lot of our readers don't actually feel behind, they feel ahead on things. Because while you may hear discussion of news, you may hear, again, headlines being recited in a bar, most of the time people don't know what they're talking about. Most of the time people don't actually know what's happening. And so our readers have this unique advantage, where they're able to be the first to actually understand, the first to actually know what's going on, and they can lead conversations, instigate conversations if that's what they're into, and be much more of in a thought leadership position rather than, again, like echoing chatter in a bar around a political conversation, like echoing headlines that they've seen from Fox News or from CNN. They're actually in a place of comfort. And if they do hear somebody chatting about something in a maybe a bit more sensationalized or impassioned way, they are not anxious. They are very secure because they know the facts. They know the statistics. They know what actually matters in the issue, like what happened, where did it happen, when did it happen, the immediate context surrounding it. So they're actually so much better informed than people who, scream headlines as soon as they see them. And that is the type of reader that we serve. We don't serve everybody in the world. We serve a person who cares about being informed and at the same time cares about being, time efficient with how they get informed. They have an allergy to bias and a huge sensitivity to sensationalism. And that's our reader. And when we find our reader and there's that sort of match made, it's resonant. And the reason we have such a high retention with our users is because when you discover our work and you're the right person to benefit from it, there is no other place you can go to get to what we serve.
Is it a hard line? Like you get one text and that's it?
We have such a high bar for what is world changing that we rarely see a news item that we need to kind of violate our schedule through. We will, right? If World War III starts at 9:05, we will text you about it. You can be sure of it. But we have not seen the level of significance of things that are like, oh wow, this cannot wait until tomorrow. Because again, we are not serving the breaking news junkie. We're serving people who are very busy, either because they're working for somebody or they're working for themselves. They're running a business. They're busy because they're running a family or because they're running a team at work. and they don't have time to keep up with news in a junky manner like 24/7. They're looking to get the download in that morning, like along with a cup of coffee in the old style of a traditional newspaper, right? Before it became sold to the advertisers. And a lot of our readers are more than happy only getting texted once. In fact, they're like, don't text me any more than that because it's too much, overwhelming. We even have a subset of users that say, actually, I don't think I want to get a text every day. I'd rather get it 3 times a week instead of 5, right? So the voice for less is louder actually than the voice for more, both among our user base and generally on the market because the market is so, we call it, overserved.
Hmm. Um, is there a story? Actually, let me back up a little bit. How long is the text? I mean, when I hear text, I think of a sentence, but it could be longer than a sentence. But so, how long could the text be,
It
approximately?
is always the same length. We have a very hard limit that we impose on ourselves and that we really like because it creates these artificial constraints that we really appreciate because it allows us to stick to our minimalism. It is always about 150 words. The hard limit is 1,500 characters. It winds up being around 120 to 150 words, but it's never more than that. It is structurally never more than 1,500 characters.
Is there a story you would not cover? Something you'd be like, oh no,
Of course,
not want to do that.
I mean, 100%. We don't cover the majority of things, right? It's like the things you get from us are things that are going to inevitably change the world, such as big fluctuations in foreign policy, relationships between multiple countries. For example, big changes in inflation, interest rates, unemployment rates, things that affect inevitably the economic conditions that we all are surrounded by. Changes in healthcare, such as vaccination rates, changes in poverty, changes in a sense of confidence by consumers or a sense of confidence by business owners, large scale research, scientific technological breakthroughs, large market movements, such as companies becoming $1 trillion companies, which we now have 4 of in the world, all of which are on the US stock market. And we focus on things that inevitably change the world. If it doesn't change the world at the scale I mentioned earlier, which is millions of people affected and large scale shifts in quality of life, optionality, safety, security type of things, you're never going to hear about that from us. There are better places to go to get your sports updates on the scores. There are better places to go to get celebrity gossip.
Hmm. So, do you have a competition? Is there anyone, doing similar stuff?
We operate in a highly competitive space, but with very few direct competitors, right? We are in many ways pioneers of a genre. We're creating something that does not exist or does not exist with the same incentives, definitely not at the scale that we run it. But at the same time, the world of being informed and the amount of providers that claim to inform you is growing by the minute. So not so much direct competition, but infinite and infinitely growing indirect competition for the same mind share, for the same perhaps share of wallet.
Hmm. Who? I mean, in a newsroom situation, I never worked in a newsroom, but someone writes a story, right? They have to show the editor. Someone has to say, that's not right." We got to cut that out, or that's in fact. They're checking facts. They're doing all that stuff. Hopefully, that's what they're doing. Does someone do that for you for the text? I mean, is there? Because it sounds like it's spread out, more than just in that room. Is there someone saying, that's true, that's not true?
Yeah, we have many checks and balances that create what we claim as the least humanly possible bias and the least opinion and the most factuality. And it's done through a mix of things. First of all, it's a whole team effort where everybody looks at the content and provides their own kind of filter with the same view of saying, can this be made more objective? Can this be made more neutral? Because we don't just go to work on the content. We go to work on every single character because every single character in the message makes a difference. So even word choice around if we're going to say Congress claws back funding or Congress cancels funding is going to matter, right? We really care about even the emotional charge of our word choice. And so it's a whole team effort of many people looking at it with the same goal of neutralizing, objectifying, and increasing the signal per noise rate. And of course, we use best in class tools from scraping and reading and summarizing and analyzing so we are able to broaden our coverage across the entire kind of river flow of news content.
Is there any AI involved?
We use best in class tools. And so a lot of them are technologically enabled. A lot of them are very software forward. Some of them use a flavor of software that we've now called to buzzword AI. But even without AI, we would always be using best in class tools for reading all the content that's out there on the internet, all the content's being shared across primary sources and all around newsrooms. But nothing ever leaves our walls without that human element to review. And not just by a single human, but by a whole team. And what distinguishes us, for example, from using ChatGPT for a news report is that layer of responsibility. ChatGPT could never take responsibility for its output, and it will never be able to. Nothing leaves our walls without us saying we take 100% responsibility for the factuality, accuracy, and every single character. And when our readers come to trust us with their news, they're not just trusting, on the SMS format or the speed. They're trusting us because we take responsibility. And we take that responsibility and put our whole brand reputation on the line every single day.
Hmm. So, I know you explained that it has to be a world changing, it's kind of a large word, but a world changing event or something that you're going to put out this text. So if it's something negative that it involves informed.now, would you, even though that's not world, if it's a negative
Well,
thing, would you
we would
would you text that out? I guess is my point. I hope
we
that
would
doesn't happen. I'm
love
just saying,
we would love to be a subject of world-changing world news. Uh, and if we are, we will have to, for our editorial standards, we will absolutely have to. But Bob, we dream of being a subject of world-class news.
I hear you. Before we wrap up, is there any scale to it in the future, or is it because if you scale, you might become what you're trying to avoid or disrupt? Is there a scale to inform.now that you're planning on doing? Growth, I guess. Besides subscribers, of course.
Yeah. I mean, what we care about is putting the power of facts in the palm of every American. There are coming up on 400 million Americans and new ones coming and being birthed here every minute. So we are very far from the scale that we imagine. And every day we wake up with a constructive dissatisfaction as to where we are and where we'd like to be. And so when you ask about scale, I mean, 100%. We want to be the default alternative solution for how the new generation of newsreaders get their news without noise, without bias, without clickbait, without ads, without sensationalism, that's set on the industry as a cancer. We want the future newsreader be free of these things. And scale for us is inevitable.
So, what's the process for a person to? It's kind of a dumb question because you just go to inform.now, but that seems to be the direct line of getting in, I guess, is my point.
That's right. It takes about 5 seconds. It should have taken you 5 seconds. It's so easy. Just go to our website. You put in your first name. In fact, you can put in a fake name. We don't care. We want you to be anonymous if you would like to be. Put in your phone number and you click, let's go. There is no credit card commitment. In fact, Inform.now is actually free for everybody. We have a expanded free premium version that we reserve for people that really care about the full power of facts. But even if you're someone who doesn't pay, we still want facts to be in your pocket. Let me give you kind of a preview into like what it looks like on our
Okay,
side. When
sure.
somebody new that comes for 2 weeks, we give them the full power, which means you get the full text, the best in class news research that we lead with. After 2 weeks, having seen the kind of full power of facts in your pocket, you get shifted into the free version, which is a very much a small cutout of the full research. And you still get benefit from it. It's still informative, and we still design it to be beneficial to you, but it is no longer the full research. And so you have a chance to text us back, give us feedback, and communicate in the exact same way as a user, as a full-on reader would. And you can also upgrade anytime because we're priced to be accessible to every single person. And it is my personal dream for our full work to be free eventually to everybody. But we'll see if we can get there. And if you are somebody who sees the value and likes to be informed in such a time efficient way, then you pay a few dollars. It's actually less than a cup of coffee a month and a lot less than a meal per year. And you get access to all of our research.
Sounds great. I appreciate you coming on, Kira. It's been very informative. It is informed.now. Thanks again, bud.
Thank you for having me, Bob. It's been a pleasure.
This has been an Unmuted podcast with Papa Mutes.